Well, Crash, the Ashes, they're finally over. Won and done by Australia, 4-1. It was a little tricky morning for Australia, set 160 to win. Few wickets fell, some probably calamitous runouts that did and almost didn't happen, but they got the job done. Talk me through that day of cricket.
Well, I just think it showed how much vulnerability there was in this Australian team. They weren't that good. A total of even 200, I think, would have done them. Yep. They were nervous. Cameron Green, he was like a 6-year-old having his first game of cricket. He was that nervous. So, like, they were gettable in this series, Australia, and it's to their credit. We've called them the Adaptables. You know how the Invincibles? We've called them the Adaptables. We christened that today, Locke. For all the way they put this patchwork quilt together. You know, after Cummins out, Hazelwood out, Lyon out, Khawaja out, Smith out, they always found a way. It was quite inspiring.
It was a special day to be here for. Yes, wrapping up the Ashes, seeing the Aussie and English teams mingling on the field post-game. It's always special to see that series wrap up. But I think for a lot of people today, will be remembered for Usman Khawaja's farewell, to see his prostration in front of that Thanks Aussie sign, where he got to give thanks to his God, to the fans, to family. It was a pretty special moment for what's a really significant career in the history of Aussie Test cricket.
It was, Locke, and my mind drifted back to Glenn McGrath, to Shane Warne's farewell, Dennis Lilly, Greg Chappell, and that's the majesty of the last Test here. It's the Test where people say goodbye. Now, just by chance the other night, we drove past Cook Avenue, where he was raised, and he mentioned it, and it's not that far from here. And we went for a drive down, and it's a very unpretentious street. And I could just picture this little boy of 10 years old walking up here, being unable to afford a ticket, having to wait until tea in the Sheffield Shield game to get in. So wasn't it poetic? He started his career here against England. He finished it against England. He had his best Test here against England. And he leaves an utterly satisfied man.
I mean, it was fantastic to see him get the recognition he deserved, but the emotion that he and his family showed, it's a special moment, and I think sums up just what cricket means to people. But on the flip side, for the English team, they came out here with all these hopes and dreams that this was going to be the chance for them to finally do something on Aussie shores for the first time in 15 years. They go back with a 4-1 loss, a few injuries. Ben Stokes basically conceded that things are going to have to change, aren't they?
Well, he did. And Brendan McCullum earlier in a press conference told the English media that he doesn't like being told what to do. So there's a powder keg brewing here. This much we know. Stokes will carry on as captain. He wants to. They will support him. McCullum will probably continue on, but he will have his wings clipped. He will have assistant coaches who will challenge him. Now, that's really interesting. But there was a line from Ben Stokes at his captaincy conference. It was interesting. He used the word drawing board, having to go back to the drawing board. He said, we skated along for 2 years with Bazball, but then we hit a wall. We played India twice, we played Australia, and we couldn't beat them. Australia actually scored faster in this series. You pointed out to me, Locke, thank you, than England. So back to the drawing board for England. I think this series will help them because it's helped them find a second and third gear, which you must have in Test, Lachlan.
And I think in terms of rating the England performance, we were talking about this before we started filming, that there's a few moments in this Test match that probably gives them a better score than we would have given them. Jacob Bethel, sensational across yesterday and today with that first-class century. I thought Josh Tongue was sensational with the ball yet again, but still overall it's an indictment for an England side that should have done better.
Well, I can't give them any more than the 3.5 out of 10, and I'm about to sit down and choose my combined 11. Now, I'm just looking at the stats, Lockie, and gee, I'm having trouble finding Englishmen to put in. And that's when you realise the magnitude of this victory. Like Michael Neser probably deserves to get in. Of course, Stark and everyone else. But while we're there, Stark, very deserved man of the series. Yeah, that they got that right. Head was brilliant. We get it, 3 centuries, but the bricks and mortar was laid down when both teams were nervous in Perth, when the game was there to be won or lost. Stark. Yeah.
Let's look at this Aussie team, because it was a tale of two press conferences when Steve Smith was joined down the press conference room with Mitchell Starc, there was a clear sense of satisfaction that they had got the job done. They had a plan going into the series, and tactically things worked marvellously. Alex Carey coming up to the stumps completely nullified some of those elements of Bazball. There was a real sense of pride from Steve Smith that their bowling unit was able to kind of outlast the English bowling unit. Both Scott Boland and Mitch Starc well into their mid-30s playing every single test. I don't think many people would have expected that at the start of the summer. But as you've mentioned before, Crash, that there was almost a sense of expectation, maybe not from the English journos and the pundits who thought the Poms would have a chance, but there was a fait accompli that the Aussies should be winning this series. The real challenge is to come.
Absolutely. And this is the thing. As great as this series was, the absolute Mount Everest for Australia is this next 18 months where they play South Africa away in 3 tests, India away where they haven't won since 2004, and then England away where they haven't won since 2001. Now, that will define them at a time when they are getting a heap of change in their generation. So that's so interesting, Lockie. But just a quick shout-out, a couple of quick ones. You know, you always regret stories you never wrote. I never quite gave Scott Boland the credit he deserved. Brilliant series. All 5 tests at age 36, 20-odd wickets at 25. I mean, it was a sterling effort from that man. And you know, who would have thought he could do it? He'd never done that sort of role before. And let's just say, Alex Carey up to the stumps, just through England. They had no surprise plans for Australia. They didn't shock Australia in any way. That's why I give them 3.5 out of 10.
And I guess a big talking point, not just this test, but throughout the whole series, has been George Bailey, Andrew McDonald, selection calls. I think, firstly, full credit to the SCG and the ground staff. I think they did a pretty wonderful job here. Steve Smith called it probably the best test wicket he's had here in his career, which is 15-odd years that we saw a bit for the bowlers early. Batters got in when they got in, and spin had a bit of an impact here. But I think in terms of what this test means for how the test, I guess, summer is set up in the future. It's great to see 5-day test cricket where Jacob Bethel was taking his time with the bat, that those battles between bat and ball were important, but it just felt like a little bit too late from this English side.
It did, and I'm glad you mentioned Adam Lewis, the curator, because he was prepared under stress to keep his job.
Yeah.
If this had been a bad wicket, I'm not sure Adam would have lasted much longer, but it's a wonderful wicket, and he can, for the next 12 months, he can dine out on this. He's a very nice man, and so we congratulate him. But, yeah, I felt that if you said, okay, give me one quote that you took from the series. Michael Vaughan said after the 3rd test, England don't like the 1%ers. They don't like working hard. You know what I mean? They don't like playing lead-up games. They don't like doing catching practice in the slips. You know, but all that stuff's fundamental.
Yeah.
You know, professional sportsmen say one of the most underrated facets of success is boredom, because you're just training all these unglamorous little 1%ers. Yeah. But they're the difference. They're the secret sauce, Lockie.
Now, I know, talking to you earlier, we've kind of done a little bit of a post-mortem, reflected on this series and gone, it's not going to be one that's remembered long into the annals of history in terms of classics, nail-biters, all that sort of things. But I think there will be moments that you pick out of this series that we'll always remember as terms of how this series was won, and maybe even in terms of individual careers, how important they were. Is there a moment that stands out in this series for you in terms of something that changed the course of the series in Australia's favour?
I felt Travis Head's century in Perth was the smack in the chops that just left England stricken.
Yep.
You know what I mean? They thought, we can't work out this guy. We've got 4 plans against him and none of them work. And I think that was the moment when they sort of thought, you know, like I still... Actually, I'll give you the moment. After that, Ben Stokes walked into a press conference after that loss, and he said, his eyes were sort of glazed, and he was still admitted he was in Travis Head shock mode. He said, we're all a bit stunned by that. And I thought, he's a pretty cool customer.
Yeah.
Genuinely rattled. And that's what great innings do. That's what great players do.
Well, I think it's the perfect way to sum up here at the SCG. Mitch Starc and Travis Head have started in this Ashes series. The Aussies are probably going to come out onto the pitch at some point, sing Under the Southern Cross.
Oh, yeah.
Steve Smith confirmed the English have been invited in for a beer that will probably take place a bit later. And soon we'll be on to the next series of cricket. But Crash, it's been another massive Ashes series. I think it's hard to put into words just how much this cricket means to Australians. But what has this series meant to you?
I love the company of the English press. Mike Atherton sits just behind us in the press box. Most fascinating character. Yeah. They tell great stories, and you feel you're floating back in time talking to them. But as much as this was not a great series, I promise you this, folks, in the next 18 months, you will see some of the greatest Test cricket. Keep watching it. Keep listening to it. Australia v England in England is majestic. Australia v India in India. Stick tight to Test cricket and you will have the time of your life.
And if this Aussie team has anything to do with it, there'll be a lot more winning along the way. So stay tuned to Code Sports for all your cricket action.